Okay, so in our last video, I showed you how to use an orthographic projection and to create a isometric view. And so that was problem number one. Now I'm going to do the first problem for section number two, which is to create a single point perspective of objects represented by this orthographic projection. And then at the end, we'll apply tonal shading. So to save a little bit of time, I've blown that up over here in this view, and I added in some dimensions. Since they don't have them, you kind of eyeball, do what you feel, just as long as the perspective is about right. So what I chose for mine was to make this length 2 of my grid cubes here, or grid squares. So I went 2, 3, 2. So that's a total of 7 across the bottom. And I went 1, 1, and then this peak to this corner straight up here is 2. So this side length is 4. So I have 7 by 4, and then I just need the depth. And again, I just went keeping it simple, 1, 1, and 1, which makes it a total of 3. So my glass box for this object would be 7 wide, 4 high, and 3 deep. So let's go ahead and take out, we're going to use orthographic paper for this, or just what we call straight graph paper. And the very first thing we do is we draw our horizon line, and since this is a single point perspective, we're going to make a single vanishing point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. And you don't really have to write in the horizon line, it just kind of helps a little bit. But you pick your vanishing point and put that dot in, that is important. So now I've got my vanishing point. I'm going to pick a spot for me to draw my actual object. And remember that the closer you get to the vanishing point, the more distorted your image looks. So I'm going to go kind of start the left side of my object somewhere in this area. And hopefully that should be good enough for you guys to see it on this. So again, I said my width was 7, and I'm going to use that whole dot, connect the dot concept. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm just glass boxing this at this point, just so I can get an idea of my dimensions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Normally, I don't use the glass box, as I said before, doing ISOs, but when I'm trying to understand what's going on in some of these orthographics, I think it really helps frame what we're doing. So now I'm building the front and face of my glass box before I start doing depth. And remember that the difference between an ISO and a single point perspective is that we go off to a vanishing point to show depth. So for my depth on this, I'm going to have to draw a construction line to my vanishing point. And this is really where having a nice long ruler is important. I can't really use my little ruler, didn't quite make it all the way over here. So I'm stealing this big one. The single point perspective is a little bit more art than our ISOs are. Okay, so we have to, and when I say art, what I mean is we have to make a judgment as to how deep we're going to represent our 3 squares. I think I'm going to go ahead and use these 3 here. You'll note that as I go up from this point now, that this length of this line is going to be different than the length of this line, and that's the big difference with a single point perspective over an ISO, is that these depth lines, you'll see how because they converge at a certain point, the further I go towards my vanishing point, the shorter the same height would be, whereas it would be consistent, or ISO meaning the same for an isometric. Okay, enough of that. What is consistent on a single point perspective is that all of my vertical lines, if you'll remember, are parallel to each other. So all 3 of these lines should be parallel. And I'm just going to use my grid lines on my graph paper to figure those out. And the same thing's true for the horizontals. So this line and this line, the horizontal lines are all going to be parallel. So this back line representing the depth of my object is also going to be parallel. And again, I'm going to make that parallel to my grid. So there you go. That's my glass box. that I'm going to try to fit this object in. So let's go back to the image and take a look at what we're doing now. So you see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 high, 7 wide, 3 deep, 1, 2, 3, and then I went up to my vanishing point here. Instead of counting up 4, I'm just going up to my vanishing point on the back end of it. Okay, from here, I'm going to go ahead and start with the frontmost face of this object, so whatever's going up to the edge. And really the best place to start with that, I'm going to look at my front view and I see I've got this shape that kind of looks like a house. I have an object line here, so that means that there's something going on like a shelf or a curve or a triangle or something. And then I see that it's divided into 3 parts. Well, I look at the top view down and I could see that this line here and this line here go all the way to my edge. Those are going to be all the way to this edge here. And so now if I kind of was looking at it there, I could see that this and this are this and this. So I know that right now that this rectangular face here and this one go all the way to the edge. And I could see that also by looking at my side view. And I could see that it goes all the way straight up and down, so I know that there's no diagonal here or curve or anything else that would throw this off, because that might appear that way. So I can see right away that I've got these 2 rectangles. So I think that's a good place to start. I'm going to go with 1 by 2, and that's all the way to the corner here, which is this corner here. I'm sorry if you can't see that. So I'm going to go up 1, over 2, and I'm going to just kind of lightly draw in this point. I'm not going to draw anything too hard yet, even though I know those are going to be object lines. And I can do the same thing over here. 2 up. I'm sorry, 2 over, 1 up. So I have my rectangles. There. So that's this, show this line, or this rectangle and this rectangle. I could see that this one here is a cutout, and I can see that from the top view. So we'll have to address that in a little bit. All right, and then I know that these are only 1 high, and I can see how deep they go here. They go down, it looks like 2, this is 1, and this whole thing is 3, so this is 2 deep here. So as I go this way, I'm going to go deep 2, and it looks like I could do that from this point on also. Now I just can't draw a line here too deep. I got to draw a line to my vanishing point. So I'm going to move my original image over just so I can get to my vanishing point. And basically I can take all of those corners that I just created, draw a light construction line that goes to this vanishing point. And I could do that for any corner that I just made because that's what I'm going to be using here. And this last corner. So there you go. Oh, I missed one. Sorry. Right here. Goes to this vanishing point over here. There. So now you can start to see how this is going to play out. I've got these 2 lines here are these 2 things which represent this little horseshoe shape. And this only goes about 1 deep. So somewhere in here I need to pick where my 1 deep is. And since I'd use this as 3, I'm going to go ahead and use this as my 1 and base everything off of that. So from here I go vertical up until I hit this construction line. And I'm not sure yet if I need to draw this in, so I'm just going to kind of draw a little dot. I don't think I've got an object line here yet. I'm just marking my space. This one's going to be horizontal, going to keep it with parallel to the grid lines, and just put dots for now in all of these spots until I'm sure what I'm going to do. Okay. Because if you look at the top down, you can see this horseshoe, there's no object line here. So I don't really want to draw one in here yet. I just want to mark that depth. so that because I do know I've got this part here. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm off the edge. Let me go back. There you go. Let me try that again. Like I said, the top view shows this whole horseshoe is one big contiguous piece. So there's no object line going here, so I don't want to draw this one in here just yet. I just marked it to kind of give me a sense of reference as to where everything is at this point. Now I do have an object line going this way, and that again is this little cutout, and I can. So I've marked that from here. I went straight over, and from here till I hit this construction line here, and then from here I went straight down. So that does mark this edge. I can go ahead and draw that in. That is this face right here is depicted right there. If I was to tilt this a little bit this way, you'd see it. So that's that. And then this one goes over. So I'm going to just go horizontal, since that's going to go horizontal. And I'm just going to make sure I'm staying parallel to my grid lines, and I'm just going to draw this line straight over, and it's going to hit the side of this object line. And that's because where this line connects up against the wall is hidden by this part of the object, so I wouldn't see it. That's why it looks like it kind of just goes somewhere randomly in the middle. As long as I'm horizontal from this point straight over, I'll be fine. And again, I could do the same thing for this back. That is this line right here. And I can darken this in now because I know that's an object line, as is this. And that goes there. I'll darken these in, like I said, when I shade. So I can see these now. I'm comfortable darkening these two object lines in like that. And here. So already you can start to see the front face of what I've got going here. So what's next? Like I said, I've got this front face. I've got this shelf. I see how this shelf goes back. This hash mark right here, this hidden line, is really is this cutout. So what I can do now is it goes back another 1 cube. So I could go over this way a total of 2 before I start going up. So I went 1 here. I can go 1 more. I'm going to keep to be consistent. I'm going to continue to use this side. So this now marks this corner right here. This is the back edge of the horseshoe before I start building this little house. I want to call it the roof of a house. So I can go ahead, and now I know that that's going to be an object line at least to here. And this one's going to, and I've already have these construction lines down here. Otherwise, I'd have to draw a line to the vanishing point, but I already have those, so I don't need to. So this is the spot where I'm kind of here right now, which is this line to here. And if I'm looking sideways at it, you'll see where the shelf ends. And so there is an object line right here for this corner, and that defines this line right here. There's this corner line, so it's going to go all the way across. Since it's a horizontal, I can take this point that I've decided is my spot. Remember, I found this by going over 2 and then vertically straight up along this grid line to here. And now I'm going to go straight over, again, keeping parallel to my grid line horizontally. And I already had this construction line that I drew earlier going from the corner, so I can go, I'm going to draw it light first just to make sure I've got it right. And I'm going to draw it right over till I hit that construction line there. And that looks good. I like that. So that is this little horseshoe shape is this horseshoe. You can kind of see it now. So I'm going to go back over and just darken those object lines in a little bit like I did on the other side. I'm happy with them. Okay, so now what am I doing? I have I'm here at this point, right? So I've done everything up to there. I've done this bottom part here, and I've done this horseshoe here. What I need to do now is this bit, which is this part here, and it's from this up. So what does that really look like? Well, I see obviously that I've got this peak or like I said, the roof of this house. And that, look, if I was to project this line down to here as the peak. So there's nothing else going on here but the peak of this house. And if I'm looking at that from the side view, you wouldn't see the triangular shape. Remember, you're just going to see this rectangle for this slant here, just like you see this rectangle from the top looking down. So I definitely have something that's oh, going from this corner up one, and then I go from there over. So I got to be careful. I don't want to just draw a diagonal from this way. What I want to do is go straight up one. And so this is my glass box. Remember, this isn't exactly the same height here because of it gets smaller. So I can't just go 1, 2. It's different. Remember, this was 4 high originally. Now this is 1, 2, and then this part here is 2 more going up this way. So what I want to do is find a halfway point between here and here. Here, remember, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, but on this one now it's just 1, 2. I'm sorry, 1, and then 2, 3, and a little bit. So somewhere up in here, I'm going to find my halfway point between this is the top of my glass box and down here. And I'm going to go call it right about here. Again, art more than science at this point. So I'm going to draw a line straight up like that. Now there's no object line going here, but I do want to identify this point. So I could draw a construction line horizontally. Before I do that though, I want to go put this corner in. Where these 2 points meet is going to be horizontally also. And I'm just going to draw a construction line at this point because I don't want it too dark. Because I don't know how high I need to go yet until I put this one. So this is going to go over now until these 2 meet. Move my ruler around to the other side so I can make sure. I know it's might be a little hard to see it, but there's a grid line here. I'm a little bit above it, so I'm going to making sure that I've got the same distance here as I do over here so that I'm parallel to it. That's really where, and I'm just going over until that construction line that I just drew. Again, there is no line here, so I don't want to draw this I already drew it a little too dark. But this is where my point is. This is what I was trying to create, is that point. Because it's from there that I'm going to go up. And I'm going to go up to a halfway point because this is a peak, right? And if you look, you see this 1-inch depth. It actually goes all the way to the back here and up to here. The same construction line I'm going to follow along. Oops, I didn't like the way I just did that. And now this is the kind of the trickiest part of it, is I got to find the halfway point back here. This is the back of my glass box, right? So my halfway point, what have I got to deal with? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to go over 3. 1, 2, 3. This is the halfway point here. And I could now connect this dot. Still going to keep these light as construction lines until I'm sure what I'm doing. And I have to do, now from here, so this is the top of my peak, right? And this is the back line here. So what I've drawn here, this point is not this one, but this point back here. And I just drew this diagonal line is the back part of this. But remember, this is actually two-dimensional, or it's not just a line, but it's actually a little rectangle here. So this is the back part of it. This part right here, you can't really see in this view. I've drawn that. What I want to do is I need to project it forward one space. But the only way to figure that out where it is in here is to draw another construction line to the vanishing point. And so I'm going to do that here. And now I know I can go from here and pick, I'm going to be parallel to this one. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to finish that off going down this way to that point. That is pretty much everything that you would see from this view because you wouldn't see this back part over here. Now, I got a lot of construction lines in there. Some of them I drew a little dark, but I wanted to make sure you could see them. So this is where my tonal shading really will help me out in here. So this is my front face again. And again, I'm done with the basics of this sketch. So you're welcome to fast forward if you don't want to watch me shade. You can fast forward to the end. You can see what it looks like. But again, I'm just going front face is a little bit darker. Side face will be a little bit lighter. And I know I went a little quick on some of this, but that's the joy of doing this on video. You can pause, fast forward, whatever you need to do. And I think this shape will look a lot better once I finish shading it in. It'll look a little more like what you'd expect it to look like. This part in here is a front face also, this recess. To be careful because this is top, so I don't want to shade that in. I don't mind shading over here because that's going to be a side view. I am going to shade that eventually. And this whole front face, remember this line isn't really here, this object line. I drew that a little too dark as construction line. So I'm just going to shade this to kind of make it go away a bit. And you can see how shading really helps give some view to this. Now be careful because again, when you do your orthographic projections, we don't shade those. I know some of you want to, but you typically don't shade an orthographic projection because it's more of a technical drawing. I mean, it's still a sketch, but and I could darken some of my construction lines now. Remember, I like to trace over my construction lines with the fat pencil. That helps smooth it out a little bit. Okay, just start my side. Remember, I'm barely touching the paper here. There really isn't, I made a mistake here because there really isn't an object line there. I don't think. Yeah, in my side view, I don't have a construction line here, so be careful what you darken in. That was supposed to be a construction line, not an object line. So there is an object line here, though, and I did not draw that in. So that finishes off this side view. This top view, it's a diagonal, the slope. So you have to choose whether or not you're going to darken this in or not. Since it's more down than vertical, I'm going to leave it the way it is. And this is shaded here. Now I'm going to go back and darken my front face again because it's a little light. And just retracing all my object lines. And that is pretty much it. There you go. That is your final object.